riots and some would say excessive police force to reveal surveillance video from inside a convenience store, which they claim shows Brown manhandling a clerk inside and stealing about $50 worth of cigars. But after releasing that information, police waited hours today to amend it with a very important detail, that the officer who stopped and fatally shot Brown did not know he was a suspect.
The initial contact between the officer and Mr. Brown was not related to the robbery.
At this point, why did you stop Michael Brown?
Because they were walking down the middle of the street blocking traffic. That was it.
So the police are admitting the shooting literally had nothing to do with the robbery. Let's take a step back. Here's how the stories line up, or more accurately, do not line up. The locations of the store robbery and the shooting, they're about a quarter of a mile apart right here in Ferguson. Police say the robbery call came in around 11:51 a.m. on Saturday. Police say the suspect committed a strong arm robbery. That's taking by force or with intimidation, no weapon involved. A description is then given. White t-shirt, long khaki shorts, yellow socks, red Cardinals baseball cap. Now, just a few minutes later, about a quarter mile away from the robbery, right on Canfield Street, the next block over, Officer Darren Wilson, who again was not searching for Brown as a suspect in the robbery, he confronts Brown and his friend Dorian Johnson for walking in the middle of Canfield Road. Police said this the day after.
One of those individuals at the time came into as the officer was exiting his police car, allegedly pushed the police officer back into the car, where he physically assaulted the police officer.
Now, at that point, police claim Brown tried to take Officer Wilson's gun, and that's when at least one shot was fired inside the police car. And then, police say, Brown tried to run, the officer pursued, and fired again. But Brown's friend Johnson disputes that, saying the officer blocked their way with his car and then reached out the window, grabbed Brown's throat, tried to pull him inside the car. It was at that point, Johnson maintains, that the officer shot Brown, and then Brown tried to get away. And here's what Johnson and another witness say happened next.
The officer gets out of his vehicle and pursues Michael as he's shooting his weapon. Michael jerks his body as if he was hit.
And at that time, he turned around with his hands up, beginning to tell the officer that he was unarmed and to tell him to stop shooting.
Then he turns around, faces the officer, and puts his hands up, and the officer continues to shoot him until he goes down to the ground.
You'll hear from another witness later in this show, but okay, what does the police report on the shooting say? Well, we don't know, because police have not released that report. Only the one about the strong-arm robbery,
That's why you know
which,
it's
of course,
bullshit.
they said had nothing to do with the shooting. A deluge of information coming out in this case, and not all of it adding up. Earlier today, I had a chance to talk with Missouri Governor Jay Nixon, a Democrat who has taken a lot of heat about his response to the unrest here in Ferguson, as well as Missouri State Highway Patrol Captain Ron Johnson, whom the governor directed to take over security in Ferguson after days of disturbances. I want to start with you, Governor. A lot of angry members of the community, angry about things having to do with far beyond this one incident and the protests and the militarized response of the police.
I think there are two things. Obviously, you've touched an old wound here when you deal with issues like this, and we recognize that. We also recognize that we want to keep the community safe while allowing those voices to be heard. And I think that Captain Johnson and team from the Missouri Highway Patrol did an outstanding job last night of clearly changing the tone, making it safer, but allowing those voices, which are appropriate in this situation, to be heard.
Captain Johnson, a lot of people in the community right now think that the release of this videotape, this closed-circuit television from the convenience store where Mike Brown, the late Mike Brown, allegedly participated in a strong-armed robbery. I know you haven't seen the video, but a lot of people in the community think there's something fishy about this, that they're trying to besmirch his reputation in the court of public opinion, and they note that it happened at the same time that the officer's name was released. Do you understand why members of the community view the release of this information suspiciously?
I do, and I'm going to try to get a clear understanding on why that was released in that way, but I can't answer that right now. But when I leave here, I am going to meet with the chief and try to get a clear understanding of the dynamics of how that occurred.
What is protocol for police if there are suspects wanted in a strong armed robbery?
And I can't speak to the protocol that the Ferguson PD has in place.
Okay. Governor Nixon, I'm sure it's no surprise to you that a lot of members of the African-American community are not your biggest fans. It goes back as far back as I can tell to '92 when you campaigned against desegregation in this state. Do you think that you have work to do when it comes to talking and conveying your appreciation of their frustrations with the African American community in the state?
Well, we've all got work to do as a society. It's not just about me or any of it. I mean, as a society, as we see from this act, there are protests going on all around the country, all around the world for what's happening here in Ferguson. This is a large chasm that needs to be joined. And I prefer not to personalize it. I've got a lot of great friends in these areas. We made a lot of progress. And I quite frankly think that the operational changes that I ordered yesterday had a big effect last night at getting both safety and peace, and we're going to continue to work to make sure that that stays the same.
There is a huge amount of criticism of how militarized police in this country have become post 9/11. I believe Missouri in the last few years has received $17 million worth of military goods, including mine-resistant trucks. I don't know if you have them on the state highway patrol, but do you see a need for this kind of equipment?
I don't know about the mine-resistant truck. I do know that there are times when we have to use our armored vehicles with our SWAT teams, reserve life, so there are times where that is appropriate. But I think there's times when it's not appropriate.
I mean, if you've got an active shooter, you got to get there, and folks got to be there safe. If you've got a bomb threat, you have to be able to meet that threat. Clearly, in this situation, the captain has presented a much different front, and I think that front's very positive. But like I say, we'll review what assets are. We're concerned about all these matters. We want to make sure there's trust with the police department.
But still, Buchanan County has a mine-resistant truck. You have a lot of mines in Buchanan County?
I mean, like I said, I'm not going to say other than, when there are significant disasters, oftentimes at the larger levels, they ask for mutual aid and cooperation. Like I said, we'll have a good discussion about that long run. We'd like to get to the end of the line on justice here. We'd like to get these things completed, but we want a peaceful night tonight where people can speak and their property is going to be protected.
I came here a few days after I was in the Palestinian territories in Israel, and I brought the same bag with a gas mask and a helmet and Kevlar because of the scenes I saw on the street and because of the rubber bullet wounds I saw of innocent people that were protesting peacefully. Does that embarrass you, the scenes that were on the television?
I mean, we all saw those scenes. They look like a war scene. And that's one of the reasons why, as we saw that escalation, I made a strategic and kind of relatively unique decision to move the way I did, to shift the control of the security on the ground here to the Highway Patrol. And the colonel assigned a great local leader here to lead that. I saw what everybody else saw. And I didn't like it. We don't want to see it again. And our hope, but that's a two-way street. That's not just the folks from law enforcement. That's the folks in the community. So this officer is working with his team to make sure that those bonds are such that those options aren't even on anybody's table.
Captain Johnson, are African Americans treated fairly in the state by the police?
I believe our citizens are treated fairly, but I also believe that we don't live in a perfect state. You know, we could be here and there could be citizens from other races could say, I haven't been treated fairly. But any individuals that have not been treated fairly is an issue. And so it's not our intent that means anything, it's our actions and the outcome. And so I think that we have a great state, but I do think some people have that feeling that they've been done wrong and something's gone wrong. We need to fix that. And we need to make sure everybody has an understanding, that training, so we're treating everybody correctly.
Are African Americans treated fairly by police?
I mean, we work very hard to try to make sure that happens. But there are folks, as the captain said, of all races that have had incidents which, if we had to do over, you wouldn't do. But clearly, when you have an incident of this size and it stirs this kind of reaction, then clearly there is a deeper wound than just the tragedy of the death of this young man. And so getting to that in the longer term is something I think we all recognize that wound and the need to heal it.
Tell us about the thought process about releasing the name of the officer. Was there a legal obligation to do that, or was that done because the community demanded it?
It was not my decision. I said a number of days ago that I thought that information should be out. I'm not going to. There's no real reason for me to comment on that. It was my decision.
Do you have any concerns that with the release of the officer's name, as some of his supporters and some members of the Ferguson police have expressed, that there is reason that his life might be in jeopardy or at least threatened?
Well, we've said all along that there should be security around this as we move forward for everybody, not just all the families and everybody directly involved. So security is something we're working on. Yeah, there clearly could be some challenges there. But the bottom line is that this information is now out. That's one step. and we'll move forward from there. The defined mission here is to make sure that the person on the ground here with his team is communicating directly, allowing people to speak, but keeping the peace right here in Ferguson.
Captain, I saw you approaching some of the young men wearing bandanas on the street yesterday. What did you tell them?
Well, I'm walking behind them. I could hear their anger. And, you know, I kind of went over to talk to them and just have some discussion with them and really asked to give us a chance and to let them know that I've got a son that looks just like them. You know, many of them talked about that they had tattoos and things like that. And I told them my son has some tattoos. So I said, my son's just like you. And I said, give us a chance. And I said, you know, there's a new day coming. There's going to be some honest interaction with you. And I said, I just didn't want to walk past them. I walked over to them because I wanted to hear what they had to say. I may have not liked it. It may have been positive. But I thought I needed to go over and hear what they had to say, just to let them know that I do respect them and respect their voice.
I went to the Canfield Green apartment complex yesterday, and I met a man who said
if
he
we
was
had a
an eyewitness
fucking
to the
president
event. He told me
like
his whole
that,
story. Police haven't contacted
America would
him.
be
Are
so
you
fucking
confident
prosperous.
this investigation is being done as thoroughly as it needs to be?
Well, there are two separate investigations going on. The Justice Department is doing its investigation, and the local prosecutor is doing theirs. I'll defer any questions to them, other than to say that I've told everyone that needs to be a full, fair investigation that seeks out all information that's relevant to this, so that justice can be served in this matter, and that'd be a better question to those folks that are running that.
But I'm telling you that 5 days after the shooting, I met somebody who says he was an eyewitness, and police have not contacted him as governor. Don't you have any concerns that maybe this investigation isn't being done as thoroughly as it needs to be done?
There are lots of folks on your Rolodex you can call and talk about that. They're actually involved in the day-to-day and the hour-to-hour work there. In my view, I say that all the relevant witnesses obviously need to be have the opportunity to speak, and that between the Justice Department and the local prosecutor, you know, they will be working hard over the next days and however long it takes to get all to reach out in that way. I know that most of those folks have said that they would hope that if folks have something to say, that they reach out to the relative law enforcement agency so they know they're available for interviews.
Last question for Captain Johnson. I'm wondering, what's your message to people in Ferguson who think the Ferguson police are not capable of conducting a thorough and fair investigation of what happened?
Well, the Ferguson Police Department is not conducting an investigation. St. Louis County and the FBI are doing that investigation. They will parallel, and they will look at both cases, and so...
All right, same question, St. Louis County. They're not. What's your message to people in Ferguson who say St. Louis County is not capable of doing this investigation thoroughly?
St. Louis County has a lot of fine women and men on their police department, a lot of fine investigators, and like the governor talked about, anybody that is a witness, you can contact them. And if you are a witness and you haven't been able to contact them, you see me, give me your name and number, and I will make sure you're put in contact with them, and I will make sure somebody approaches you and get your name and get you in touch with the right person. I will do that.
Captain Ron Johnson of the Missouri State Highway Patrol and
Now,
Governor
Nets.
Jay Nixon, thank you so much for your time.
How the cookie crumbles.
Coming up next on The Lead, character assassination. That's at least what the family of Mike Brown is accusing the Ferguson police of after the department released this video of him allegedly robbing a convenience store the day of his death. What his family knew about that crime and when. Plus, will the careful calm of today hold in the wake of explosive new details from the Ferguson police? We'll meet the man who is trying to keep the peace.
Nature Valley Crunchy Granola Bars